According to the Huffington Post, NASA has released images of a giant meteor that exploded over Earth in 2018. The meteor had more than 10 times the energy of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima during World War II. The fireball, NASA's term for an exceptionally bright meteor visible over a wide area, exploded about 16 miles above the Bering Sea on December 18th. Although fireballs are quite common, this was the most powerful meteor scientists have tracked since 2013. NASA shared images of the fireball captured from the Terra satellite. An image sequence shows the explosion, while another shows a true color photo of the remnants of the meteor's passage.
According to Reuters, an independent study led by an academic group in Spain has shown what personal information can easily be collected by Android mobile devices. The investigation looked at apps pre-installed on Android devices from 2,748 users from 214 vendors across 130 countries. The study found a potential threat to users' privacy and security with pre-installed apps that request access to data through Google. Co-author of the study, Juan Tapiador, said there's a lack of regulation and transparency, and no one seems to be monitoring what these stakeholders and apps do.
According to Reuters, the massive flooding that submerged parts of 3 Midwestern states has begun to recede in Kansas City. The National Weather Service, however, warns that Montana and the Dakotas could be looking at more flooding in the coming weeks. National Weather Service meteorologist David Roth explains that the area could see a warm-up in the coming weeks, which could cause the once frozen river ice to break up into giant chunks, causing more flooding. No further precipitation is forecast for the Midwest until midweek, when moderate rainfall is expected.
Cyclone Veronica is battering the northwest coast of Australia. Port Hedland is among the towns reporting wind speeds of up to 160 kilometers an hour. The storm is particularly dangerous because it's moving slowly and there's a threat of flooding. Rob McBride has more from Port Hedland.
Cyclone Veronica has made landfall with full force. It has built out at sea, gaining in strength and intensity, and has been battering this long stretch of West Australian coastline. In addition to its storm force winds, it's also been accompanied by a storm surge which has started to inundate low-lying areas along this coastline. It's a problem of flooding that will be made worse in the coming days by the torrential rain associated with this weather system. Some areas have been told to expect several hundred millimeters in the coming days. People here were told to expect an extreme weather event. That is now what they are dealing with. In addition to the flooding in the coming days, they will be assessing the damage from this.
Food has begun arriving in Turkana. It's one of 13 counties most affected by a severe drought. The government says more than 1 million people need urgent help. A quarter of Turkana's residents are on the brink of starvation. This food has come from Kenya's capital, Nairobi.
We need to get a permanent solution to this problem because we've been having cases of drought previously, and you see, we just came with temporary measures.
The national government has released $2 million to help. Other Kenyans are making donations through different initiatives.
There's a rush to get food to those who need it most, but this is a drought that was anticipated. There were warning signs since last year when the short rains failed. That's why many Kenyans are so angry about how the government has responded to this crisis.
Droughts, cattle rustling, and conflicts over water and pasture are common in this vast region with an incredibly difficult terrain. The local government has spent millions of dollars sinking boreholes, tracking water to those who need it, and setting up agriculture projects. Officials say harvesting and storing water in dams will help, but there's just not enough money.
To do those dams will require us to shelve so many other priorities of the people. As you are told, you will do budgeting on the priorities of the people. You tell people, okay, let's set all the money to water, then you will face a problem because education is a problem.
Aid workers also say convincing donors to invest in long-term projects to deal with climate change has been hard.
The acceleration of climate change is fast, and our capacity to cope and respond is not as quick as it should be, and therefore we are very much entering into a vicious circle where we are looking at short-term solutions addressing the effects of the crisis and not necessarily the root causes of the crisis.
For now, the focus is getting immediate help to families that have nothing but these wild fruits to eat. But many villagers told us they want more. They say they need a lasting solution if they are to survive what has become a cycle of devastation.
They brought central London to a standstill at a time when the government is paralysed by Brexit. This was supposed to be the week when the UK would have begun its divorce from the European Union. Instead,
what do we want? Where do we want it?
There is more uncertainty, more waiting, and more anger. And the 48% of Britons who voted in the referendum 3 years ago to remain in the UK are increasingly exasperated.
This wasn't what they were promised. This was a campaign based on lies, and I think people are waking up and realising the truth of what leaving the European Union will actually mean to us.
Politicians from across the spectrum called for the government to arrange another referendum, echoing the demonstrators' concern at the deadlock.
Whether you voted for remaining in the European Union or to leave the European Union, whichever political party you support, I think we can all agree that the path we're being forced down is not in the national interest. It'll make us poorer, not richer, so it'll make us weaker, not stronger. It's making us more divided, not more united.
They came from all over Britain, all against the very idea of Brexit. And given the strength of feeling on show here, it's very difficult to see how this can be reconciled when, and even if, Brexit happens.
I wanted to remain because I'm European. I'm one of a club, and I want to stay one of a club. I don't want us to be Little Britain all on our own.
There is a lot riding on what happens over the next few days now that Prime Minister Theresa May faces extra time to push through her deal. She is facing the political fight of her life, one that she may not survive. May has blamed British MPs for the Brexit obstacles, and that has cost her support for another attempt at a vote on her withdrawal agreement. The marchers insist that nothing is a done deal. Britain is in full swing of a political crisis not seen in decades. And while there is a political stalemate, it is impossible to predict what happens next.
Business Insider reports a California avocado grower is recalling whole avocados sold to stores in 6 states over a possible listeria contamination. Henry Avocado announced Saturday. Henry Avocado is issuing this voluntary recall out of an abundance of caution due to positive test results on environmental samples taken during a routine government inspection at its California packing facility. The recall impacts avocados shipped to Arizona, California, Florida, New Hampshire, North Carolina, and Wisconsin.
Mexican community kitchens, where some of the country's most vulnerable can get a cheap meal. For Guadalupe, they're a lifesaver in feeding her family of 6.
I know, it's really helped with our finances, even with the gas for the stove. And now I go to work rather than just worrying about cooking. And until now, we've never gotten sick.
But many of Mexico's almost 6,000 federal food kitchens have already shut as part of budget cuts to social services. It's not just the soup kitchens closing their doors. Funds have also been slashed for child daycare centres, and the government planned to shut down shelters for women fleeing domestic violence and give them money instead, until a backlash made it change its mind. And this has all come from a president who's long championed the poor and vulnerable. That's caused some surprise and indignation. He says the measures necessary to stamp out corruption.
It's finished. Around 30 years of these programs, which were just used to win elections and get media attention. Programs which encouraged corruption, using the name of the humble, the poor, to do it. That's all finished.
There's something in that. The government's social ministry was recently implicated in a monumental corruption scandal. But civil society groups say the wholesale scrapping of programs for the poor is not the answer. And some worry there are other motivations.
CNN reports the deadly Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo has surpassed 1,000 cases, according to the country's health ministry. The number of confirmed cases stands at 1,009, of which 944 are confirmed and 65 are probable, in an outbreak that started in August. The death toll is at 629. 564 are confirmed from Ebola and 65 are probable. It's the second deadliest and second largest Ebola outbreak in history, topped only by one in West Africa in 2014, when the disease killed more than 11,000 people, according to the World Health Organization.
They are tired and traumatized, but at least these victims of Cyclone Idai are safe now. Each one has their own harrowing story about the time the storms came. Each day, more of them come, mostly from Buzi district. Armando Chabata is 65 years of age. He had a small holding and lived alone. He was rescued after spending 4 days stuck in a tree without food. He says his life has changed forever.
I have nothing to go back to. My farm, my house, all were destroyed. There is nothing left. I need to start afresh, but I don't know how.
He lives here now in the Samora Michel school in Bira, along with 1,200 other displaced people. Christina arrived on Saturday after surviving for 4 days on the roof of a church in Buzi. Her foot was infected after she stepped on a piece of submerged roofing while wading to safety. Her future, like many others, is something she finds difficult to contemplate.
From now on, life will be difficult. I will need food, I will need shelter. He's crying for food now, but I don't know what he will be crying for when we go back.
These people are getting 3 meals a day and access to medical care, so safe and sound and dry, but they have no idea when they'll be able to go back to their homes. That is, if they have a home to go back to. The massive emergency operation involves dozens of countries and is costing more than $50 million. But the focus is now changing.
At the moment, the acute phase of rescue is pretty much over. Those people needing to be lifted out of raging water, that are also people in trees and on the top of houses. Most of that those people have been rescued. What I think the focus area at the moment now is relief.
According to Reuters, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is clear that the status of Golan has not changed after U.S. President Donald Trump recognized the Golan Heights as Israeli territory. UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric said that the UN's policy on Golan is reflected in the relevant resolutions of the Security Council and that policy has not changed. In 1981, the UN declared that Israel had no jurisdiction in the occupied Syrian Golan Heights without international legal effect.
A terrifying view from inside the cruise ship. Before the alarm went off. The Mayday call was put out on Saturday as the vessel drifted in the Norwegian Sea. More than 1,300 passengers and crew were on board the Viking Sky when the luxury cruise liner's engines failed during stormy weather. It was battered by 8-meter waves just off the coast of Norway. Here the weather is known to be fierce, and the shallow waters are renowned for their reefs. The rescue of the passengers began on Saturday evening, with the evacuation of the ship continuing throughout the night. Most of those on board were elderly tourists, mainly from the United States and the UK. A few escaped with light injuries, many traumatized by the experience.
It is clear that it is a serious situation when a cruise ship with over 1,300 passengers is outside one of Northern Europe's worst waters, with small reefs and all. Firstly, this is a serious situation, but at the same time they managed to get anchor for the boat, so the boat is lying at rest.
Tugboats, one in front and the other behind, towed the ship towards safety. The vessel is about 80 kilometers away from the port city of Molde, where it is headed. The storms at sea are set to calm, but it brought about what was supposed to be a 12-day cruise along Norway's coast to an abrupt and terrifying
On
end.
display, locally built battle tanks, cruise and ballistic missiles, showing both conventional and nuclear capabilities, and a flypast by Pakistan's own JF-17 fighter built in collaboration with China. The Malaysian Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, the guest of honor on this occasion. Azerbaijan's Defense Minister, Bahrain's Chief of Army Staff, and Omani officials also attending. Contingents from Azerbaijan, Bahrain, China, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka and Turkey also took part in the parade alongside Pakistan's armed forces.
The big difference I can see is that in the last one there were very few representation from the Muslim world, and this time there were many countries like Bahrain, Turkey and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So that shows basically the Muslim strength across the globe.
Today was an excellent event. Pakistan Army has done an excellent job. We are very proud of our Pakistan Imran Khan, and especially our chief. We love you.
Many see today's display as evidence of Pakistan's growing influence in the area.
One more important thing is this, that in the backdrop of the terrorism menace that Pakistan was facing for the last 10-12 years, and this Pakistan Day parade was cancelled many times. So this Pakistan Day is particularly important in the backdrop of the recent skirmishes or problems within India and Pakistan. And this day, which is usually being used to showcase Pakistan's military prowess and military muscle. On the international perspective, it is also important. We are now emerging in not in terms of economy, but also in terms of international relations, international politics, international sports, and international coordination.
Paratroopers from Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and Sri Lanka took part in a free fall jump. Turkish pilots showed their skills in F-16 fighter jets, but it was China's J-10 aircraft which stole the show and added color to the display of aerial aerobatics. President of Pakistan Arif Alvi said the country desired peace in the region, but warned the quest for peace should not be mistaken as a sign of weakness. That could have been in response to a greeting from the Indian Prime Minister, in which he said, "It's time for the people of the subcontinent to work together for democracy and peace." So despite the words of peace, the message from the parade was clear that Pakistan was ready and able to retaliate against any aggression, and that it has powerful friends in the region.